We also knew that it is important for us to get global investors if we really want to fulfill our dream and our vision and our purpose of getting into multiple countries and actually servicing a big number of people beyond South Africa.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. We've seen your name and your photo and TymeBank's logo flashed on the screen multiple times today, but it really is an honor and a privilege to be having this conversation with you. So where I want to begin is I want to go back in time a little bit. It's a good pun. So TymeBank, as we know it today, officially launched in 2018, but the story really begins much earlier. And at the center of it is a deep friendship, as I've come to understand, with your co-founder, Koen. So can you share a little bit more about this partnership and kind of the early days of what led up to TymeBank as we know it today?
Oh, Jackie, thank you. It's a wonderful honor to be here and to share with you the story of a partnership and partnerships. Actually, the culture of partnerships, I think, is absolutely a core thread of the Time story. So Koen and I actually met in 1989. It was the last year before Nelson Mandela was released in South Africa. We were both presidents of the student councils of two different universities at that time. So we were involved in, while we were studying, myself engineering and him law, we were involved in student politics. Since then, we became best friends. We were Toastmasters at each other's weddings in the 90s. And actually, while in the 2000s, when I was building businesses, this is my third startup, Koen was building a corporate career and expertise, institutional knowledge around law and banking and regulation, and also becoming very fit for the hard boardroom political environment and having to be able to manage those corridors. In the 2000s, and actually in 2000, me and a few guys founded the company, an AI software company, and we globalized that company. Koen was an investor, a family and friends investor in that company. So we came very close during those years. So where the Time story started is when Koen actually read a book, Hernando de Soto's The Mystery of Capital. Some of you might have read or heard about the book, which basically describes the difference between people who have capital, multi-generation capital, and people that don't have that, and the importance of property rights and so on. And the problem was the problem of missing information, data. And he decided to focus his career on inclusive banking. So he left, he was a managing partner of Africa's biggest law firm, Edward Nathan at that stage. He resigned from there. He became a director in one of the incumbent banks in South Africa, Standard Bank, and actually started to build TymeBank 0.01 within Standard Bank. But as you might realize, this period was full of lots of gremlins because it's very difficult for an incumbent bank to really consume something that is so disruptive to itself. So him and his team started to be known as a cult of some sort within Standard Bank, literally. And in 2011, when me and my founders or partners who built the AI business with me, we sold our business to GE in 2011. The time was ripe to do something different. We met immediately after that. We cashed in, had a bit of cash in hand, and we shook hands and we said, right, let's build a multi-country bank for emerging markets. You know, and that was 2011. I'm going to just give you a bit of a rundown that how the journey actually unfolded up to 2019 when we launched our first offering in the market. Remember now, that was 2011. Going to 2018, 19. We decided to partner with Deloitte to build the first instance of our offering. And the reason why we decided to partner with Deloitte is we said, First of all, the capital markets of South Africa are very shallow. We have to get a proper brand behind us and also access to proper banking skill, regulatory and technology-wise. We started to, and the next thing we did was to sell a project to MTN, the mobile network operator in South Africa, actually throughout Africa and the Middle East, to build them a bank, not a wallet, but a bank with a bank license. I know National Bank of Greece, people are around here, we went to one of their subsidiaries and actually rented a bank license to build within a period of 6 months a bank offering that we showcased to MTN in June 2012. What actually happened, just as we were about to switch this bank on in the clear, Deloitte realized that they've got a conflict of interest. National Bank of Greece and South African Bank of Athens were both audited by Deloitte, and Deloitte couldn't continue with the project. So we built a team, we built the prototype, so to speak, in the clear, and then Koen and I had the opportunity to say, right, listen, let's take this offering. We spun it out of Deloitte, took literally my old holding company of the previous business, capitalized it with our own money, and took the team and started with the project. Now, we needed, MTN also at that stage, they got cold feet, right, about wanting to have a bank. We sold a few consulting projects with them. We went to family and friends, got some capital. Many of those guys who supported me in the first round got their capital in, and we, for 3-4 months, we treaded water and started to build this until MTN came back to us and said they want this, right? And now we sold them a project. Again, because of the lack of capital in South Africa, access to deep capital, we did it in such a way that MTN basically funded the majority of our operating costs, and we had a deal with him that we'll share the intellectual property. So another thing that we did is we went to Namibia and actually built a bank, a full bank with our own bank license. We did that over the course of 2 years in partnership with one of my brother's business in Namibia. We launched that bank end of 2014, right? Then in 2014, we were approached by Commonwealth Bank. And we said, listen, this is now money for Jan, you know. I mean, we are going to be able to build a multi-country digital bank by selling time to Commonwealth Bank. Great bank, we've got capital, we've got cloud, we've got everything going for us. And we sold the business in early 2015 to Commonwealth Bank. That took us into Southeast Asia, and that's how the Southeast Asian story started. Not by design, but by destiny. And it introduced us to those markets. 2018, we bought back a very clunky bank because it was a very, very tough period for the time team, including myself. Having to work within that environment again, it was like a second Standard Bank, so to speak. And Koen and I got the opportunity to buy it back in 2018, which we did. We did that with the backing of Patrice Motsepe, one of the multi-billionaires in South Africa. And then we had Time Bank, we could switch it on.
As we know it today. So an overnight success, right? Clearly, as Sergio was saying, you know, a lot of blips, quite a journey to get to where we're flashing your pictures on the screen and talking about this $1 billion plus valuation. It wasn't, you know, a straight and up and to the right road. So you didn't raise traditional venture capital in the early days. Can you tell us more about your early capital raising journey?
Okay, so Jackie, the early days, as I've just to recap that, basically was family and friends and selling projects, okay, which worked very well for us. And then our capital raise exercise was selling it to Commonwealth Bank. You know, that was a great story for us. But then when we bought it back, we actually bought it back with $700 million. What is that? $35 million in the bank account. Mm-hmm. But the burn rate was very high. The difficulty was also that South Africa was not a good investment destination for investors, one. And two, the local investor, the South African investor, just didn't understand what we wanted to do. They thought we were completely crazy and nuts and all the rest, like Sergio said. And we also knew that it is important for us to get global investors if we really want to fulfill our dream and our vision and our purpose of getting into multiple countries and actually servicing a big number of people beyond South Africa. Mm-hmm. In the initial phases, it was again with Patrice Motsepe's business there. We batted share for share between Koen and myself, family and friends supporting us as well while we were putting money in with an institutional investor. As we were knocking down doors, we had 200, 300 conversations with different investors that told us how great we are, but they're not going to invest. And then 2020 came. We had an oversubscribed capital raise that was about to close middle of April 2020. Lockdowns happened, we all know what happened there. And then Patrice Motsepe had to perform, and Koen and I put basically most of the money that we made, took off the table in 2015. We put back into the business out of conviction and because it was the right thing to do. We made it pull through those very, very difficult years, but it learned us a lot. The great feat, the breakthrough came in of 2021 when Apus invested with BII, at that stage still the CDC, and then Tencent followed, and a number of other companies followed, and things became much easier on the capital raise front, ending with the latest one with Nubank and M&G Invest. That also came.
It's an incredible story, and I think that we hear this from founders time and time again. You get a lot of no's before you get the yeses, and then once you get that big yes, they come pretty quickly. But yes, you just mentioned your most recent round led by Nubank, and it's such an interesting, first of all, it's a great Endeavor story, but it's a really great example of a founder investing in another founder, and it's not the most traditional form of venture capital raise. So tell us a little bit more about how that round came together and what it's been like to get capital from another founder who has the operational experience.
That's interesting. People say to me, haven't you guys learned your lesson? You've been with Standard Bank, you've been with CBA, didn't work. Another bank becoming involved. Now, the interesting thing here is there's a big difference, and that is that Nubank is still founder-led. Mm-hmm. And it's got the founder mentality or the founder mindset, and we're experiencing it every day. Although it's highly regulated because the New York Stock Exchange a listed company. So how this one came about is end of 2023, we learned that David Valles is going to be speaking at the New York Gala, right? And I reached out to Adrian, your president at that time, and asked him whether he would like to introduce us, and he introduced us. And we met in New York and had a follow-up conversation in February of 2024. Now, people say, listen, how difficult is it? I know Nubank is looking at TymeBank, as many, like we are also looking at all players, and they must be looking around also at the other players. The difference of Endeavor introducing us is it's this network of trust that we are all part of. It's a validation of quality. It's a quality stamp. And so it immediately created a platform from where chemistry can develop, because you've got a departing point of trust. Okay, and that's where energy comes from. That's where true equity creation happens, is around trust. So Nubank visited us in May, June in South Africa and the Philippines. And we started the negotiations, and we closed out in December with them. It was a great process in itself, and what is important now is what has been happening since then. we are working closely with the leadership of Nubank. They're very interested in what we are doing. And we literally are at a functional level, having working streams, where the different groups between us and Nubank are jointly working on some offerings and insights. For example, like on the data science, data insights AI stream, or credit, or customer acquisition cost, or compliance and risk. We also are starting to move at the middle management level, people between us. So there are internships where we second some of our people into Nubank and they second some of their people into us to get these co-learnings going. And it's incredible. I mean, we will be rolling out, I believe, in the next year or two, some of our product offerings into some of their markets. And they will be helping us to do the same in the in the South African and the Southeast Asian markets and wherever we go.
That's incredible. It's such a unique partnership with a lot of synergies, clearly. So when we look at TymeBank, right, started in South Africa, significant operations there, expansion into Southeast Asia, it's not super straightforward, right, those choices. So can you tell us a little bit more about your expansion strategy and how you've chosen which markets to go into?
I think you've now heard the story about how we got into Southeast Asia, because people ask us, why not Africa? How did you? And the short and long of it is, we got exposed to that high growth environment and fell in love with that environment, and we established ourselves there. We've got very specific criteria around how we select countries, and it boils down to mainly 3 categories. The one is, or 4 categories. The one is population size. I mean, we need to have proper population size for what we try to do. The other one is distribution, because of the way in which we, and hopefully we'll get to that, have designed this offering of ours to be a real accessible offering to all. The distribution strategy is very important, so we need the retailers that we can actually partner with in market. The other one is a regulatory framework with 3 things. The one is that digital KYC must be acceptable. Mm-hmm. The regulator must be progressive and open. And also the third one is the regulator must accept AWS, because we decided to go AWS as a cloud supplier, and also be able to deal with data offshore within a secured cloud environment. So those are the basics that we look at.
That's amazing. So you and Koen have been switching gears a little bit, so not only building Time, but you've also been investing in founders for the past 15 years yourselves. Can you share a little bit about your philosophy around this? What do you look for in founders that you back, and why do you continue to do this?
So Jackie, we invest in founders we really can trust and see that we can build long-term relationships with. So life is too short just to go for the for what's on paper on Excel. We invest in founders that we trust, who've got audacious ambitions and are very courageous, who inspire, and I would say most important of all is who can understand how power works. And to explain what I'm trying to say here, and that's one of the threads that I believe is still very important for us in Time, is that if power comes from within the organization to the leader, the power comes from the validation of people working for you and working with you, that validates you and who trusts you. Why? Because they trust your intent and your ability. Right? If that's where power comes from, we will put our money in. As soon as power starts to come from the top, I think it's for someone else to invest in.
Interesting. So you and Koen are also investors in Fund 4, and you've recently committed to Fund 5. I think we got to do this. Yeah, Alan, where's Alan? Can you just share a little bit more, since we're sitting here at the investor meeting, why you believe in the Endeavor Catalyst model?
yesterday night at the dinner, I made a comment. I said, first thing is it makes commercial sense. And then there was a moment of silence in the room. It's almost like you shouldn't say that because it's all about the purpose and so on. But I think what's important is I don't believe in the longevity and the sustainability in a multi-generative way of non-profit organizations. There must be a risk return for investors. So if that, first of all, that stacks up. If you look at Endeavour Catalyst and what's been presented here this morning, if there's a 20% IRR, it means that there's a 13 to 14% IRR for the investor on the 50% side. The other important thing is the network, is the community, people. I think it's like Sergio mentioned, people who love being together, learning from one another. We share a similar set of values, people of integrity, and we are in a curated network of trust. And we believe that's very important. And then a very important one for us as well is the fact that half of the carry of Endeavour is going back to the local offices. And we are passionate about South Africa, and we want to see it work. We know that Endeavour in South Africa, for example, is going to make a major difference in the next decade and beyond that. And Endeavour 5 and Endeavour 6 and 7 will facilitate that as well.
Amazing. So if you asked yourself 20 years ago what success would look like, and you ask yourself the same question today, what's changed?
20 years ago, I was, 38, 37, 38. It was still at that stage where I think financial success and success in terms of that was quite important. I always say to people who say it's not about the money, I say I'd rather give people a lot of money whose hearts and intentions are good, right? So it is also important. But what I started to realize, it is more important now to focus on what is sustainable and have longevity. It is not about leaving a personal legacy. We must let the shackles fall off our children and other people. It's not about us being remembered. It's about making sure that people can really prosper and grow. That's very important for me. I get a lot of joy just to see how our second generation of leaders are currently actually coming through and being the CEOs in our businesses. Mm-hmm. The guys who were around late 20s when we started this project are now in their early 40s. Perfect age for great CEOs who can understand how the world is moving in a much better way than I can. I mean, and by the way, I'm not old. No. But it's interesting, how over time, the young guys are just starting to outperform at certain levels. We can guide, we can lead. I can't manage anymore like they can manage and lead in some ways. So it's about sustainability and longevity.
I love that. Well, I think with that, let's leave it at sustainability and longevity. How about a big round of applause for Chart? Thank you for being here.